to be honest, providing free boxing sessions for young people in an attempt to get them engaged in something positive, build up their physical and emotional well-being, and also work with people that have got special needs, try and give them something good to do so they can feel a little bit better about themselves and enjoy getting involved in a sport like boxing, which normally has some barriers for those sorts of children that we're working with. In terms of things that I'm most proud of, I think setting boxing for better up and growing it over the last 3 years has got to be right up there. It was a little bit of a pie in the sky idea at one point, and then all of a sudden the wheel started going into motion. It's become a much bigger and better thing than I ever thought it would be, so that's got to be up there. And then just yesterday we was at the Wigan Town Hall, was invited for a reception with the Mayor, which was to recognise an award that we won during the King's coronation, which was awarded to us. We was one of 2 people in Wigan and one of 11 in Greater Manchester that got this award, the Coronation Champion Award. And that was in recognition of all the hard work that I got into setting up Boxing for Better. So I think from a professional point of view, they're certainly 2 of the most notable things that I can think of.
Fantastic. Mr. Speakman, now remember, I don't want the lost book of the Old Testament here, because your CV is that long. Try and cut it short.
That's a great intro, thanks Alan. Yeah, Gary Speakman, sorry. I guess the best way to summarise my sort of background is in 2 phases. First phase, I'm a proud Wiganer, and I've had a very eclectic and somewhat successful business career, which
we can see you and hear you, Fee. That's great. Go on, sorry.
A business career which I sort of brought to a sort of a close in terms of permanent full-time employment at the end of 2018. So I've spent the last 5 years even more focused on things that I'd already started to do around providing opportunities for young people in Wigan through the organisations that I, in the main, chair. So the Deanery High School, which actually Liam Moore is also involved with as a governor now. Wigan Youth Zone, where I'm chair. Highfield Cricket Club, where I've been chair for 20 years, and I think that's probably where we're going to be spending most of the discussion today. So, yeah, a lot of things that are associated with delivering opportunities for Wigan. And I think that's what I'm most proud of, actually, the fact that I sort of chose to do that, and all of those organisations are making a fantastic contribution to the young people of Wigan. So that's the thing I'm most proud of. If I was going to be all sort of personal, the fact, and I know the professional athletes around me will be aghast, but I managed to play at Wembley, the old Wembley, twice. So that's a personal achievement which I can explain more later.
Miss Barron, could you give us a brief resume of your illustrious career, please?
I will do. Hello, everyone. Antonia Barron. Writer, academic, dancer, choreographer, teacher. I think the 2 things I'm most proud of is that in my mid-30s, having never sailed before, I ended up sailing in Australian national titles. And that in May, when I turn 75, it will be 60 years since I first stood in a studio as a student teacher. So that will be my 60 years teaching anniversary.
Fantastic. Fiona Brockway.
Hello. Finally, I'm there.
You need to move slightly one way, Fee.
Yeah. I don't
Other
know.
way. That's it.
Hang on.
Hang on. That way.
I just need some help from my daughter because it's her computer. Can you? Hello.
Hello, Fiona's daughter.
How do I?
We can only see half your mum.
Here we go.
That's better.
All right. Hello.
Yes. Hello there, Fiona. So what we'd like is a brief resume of your illustrious career and 2 things you are most proud of within that career professionally.
Okay. Briefly, I was at a young age. I was accepted into the Royal Ballet School, which was, I didn't realise at the time, but quite an achievement. And then I went on to become a member of the Royal Ballet Company. I was promoted to a first soloist. Then, unfortunately, I had to sort of move abroad. But I was a guest principal with Hong Kong Ballet. I was invited to be a guest principal Scottish Ballet. And my career has evolved with my life, which is exciting and interesting. Proud. I mean, I've had some moments in my life. It's very exciting. I suppose one of the things is that when my mother was at university in London, my father used to come up. He was terribly romantic, and she was massively into opera. And he used to spend every penny he had on going to buying her a seat in the Gods at the Opera House. And of course, never did she ever imagine in 1 second that she would be watching her daughter at Covent Garden dancing. So that gives me that meant a lot to me. But also just being able to, I think, coach and pass on things that I've learned in my career. I think that's absolutely essential. And the people I was lucky enough to work with, which are huge names in my industry, and their words are like imprinted on me, and it's lovely to be able to pass those things on. And I also started a production company in Hong Kong when I was over there, which was quite successful, and we moved into the more commercial, including we were quite on the rugby sevens in Hong Kong, which is quite a big deal. It's very exciting. And we did the on-pitch entertainment between the finals, which was a real big deal at the time. And I love that. It's just that, like we're talking about today, the synergy between, performing arts and sports, and there is such a close connection. So
fantastic. We are losing your face again, Fee. You need to move your camera.
Hang on, I'm going to sit. Where am I going to sit?
No, go the other way.
It's doing a weird thing. I'm not moving, but it keeps moving.
That's better. That's fantastic.
I'm not going to move.
The delicious Donna then. Tell us about you, darling.
Hi there, everybody. I'm dance director at Pianos, Pies and Pirouettes. So I'm the other half of Alan in our business. I'm obviously a dance teacher and a carer as well. I work with disabilities and adults with learning disabilities, as well as the dance side. So I'm also working inclusive dance, as well as being a typical dance teacher. And proudest moment, I would say, is there's loads of proudest moments, but just from the top of my head, I would say working through the ranks, as they say, back in the day when I was a professional, starting off as dancer, working through up to choreographer, putting shows on cruise ships, putting production shows throughout the world, being able to see the world while working. So that's one. And the other one, I have to say, I was so proud of the Wigan Warrior boys that we took to the Royal Ballet School for a day, and we had a class there. It was absolutely wonderful. I was so proud.
Fantastic. And last but not least, the extremely handsome Mr. Liam Moore. Liam, tell us about you.
Thank you, Alan. Yes, I'm Liam, and I'm a professional rugby league referee here in the UK. As you can imagine, a referee is not particularly popular, but being a referee has given me some fantastic experiences already. Some of them include refereeing finals at Wembley, Challenge Cup finals, refereeing grand finals at Old Trafford, being involved in World Cups down in Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand. Some fantastic experiences already. Highlights, without going into the single finals and things like that, individual things, I'd say I really enjoy working with younger referees now and try and develop some of their characteristics. Gary's touched on already. I do a little bit of work now as a governor in school. I enjoy that role, but I think nurturing and trying passing on your experience to younger officials and younger people and helping them develop as a person as well as developing as a referee is something that really does motivate me. So yeah, I'm really excited to be in stuff.
Thank you very much for that, one and all. In terms of the conversation then, we're going to concentrate primarily on those questions that I sent you. Fiona has disappeared altogether now. Not quite sure what she's doing.
Yeah, sorry. We're just having a few technical problems here.
All right, okay. We'll stick sort of to those questions, but as I say, whether we get sidetracked is another matter, and we need to carry on. So the essence is to talk about the synergy between sport and dance, how the two may complement each other. Donna's already indicated that we have done some work with that before with the likes of Wigan Warriors, and the whole point of that was to try and dispel the image that all male dancers must be totally effeminate and need to be I don't know, ridiculed, especially up here in the north, where there appears to be this barrier towards dancing per se. I mean, we had a quick flick round here before, and everyone here who's extremely good at the roles all feels that as a dancer they're a block of wood and they would never dream of getting up doing it. And I don't think it's just because they're a block of wood. I think it's because they feel slightly uncomfortable when they're doing it, which, considering every other culture in the world, seems it's the men who get up and do the dancing, especially if you look at Eastern Europe, etc., and even think about the hackers of the Rugby League teams that they do. What is it about British men in particular that makes them averse to this? So that's the kind of open subject. Let's throw it open. So the dancing ladies, Antonia, first of all, as you're in Australia, let's talk to you first. What's your view on this whole link between sport and why it doesn't work in this country in terms of men dancing, and what the two linking together could do, in your opinion? Let's have a listen to that.
Okay, well, to me, historically, we've focused on the differences, and we have tended to look at all physical activities as specialized and quite sort of within their own limitations. I think there are more things that link us than there are that separate us. And I know anytime I've watched, you watch the Olympics or sport on television or something, if I look at taekwondo or ice hockey or Basque folk dancing or boxing or Australian rules football, I see things I recognize as a dancer, because we borrow things all the time. We take movements and we take principles of movements. Because when you think about it, the three principles of all movement are: first, you've got to know where your weight is. That applies to every sport and every form of dance you can think of. Secondly, you've got to be able to transfer your weight from where it is to where you want it securely and with absolute predictability. And thirdly, you want quick muscle response. Now, isn't that common to everything that we do?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Fiona, can you pick up on that a little bit more? And I mean, we've mentioned it while we were setting up this whole system, one or two things about injuries that sports people tend to suffer. And we talked about that sports tend to concentrate on certain aspects of the body because they want you to run very fast over a short space of time, which let's say you're a sprinter, which in turn could probably limit your capacity to do anything else. I mean, I mentioned that I'd seen a short Facebook video and it was showing male gymnasts attempting to do female gymnasts routine. So the same sport, but when they actually came to do it, the men were so ungraceful and so incapable of doing what the girl gymnasts do. Now that surely must be because of the nature of the exercise they are doing, the fact that the graceful element has been taken out, and the centre of balance, because they couldn't turn round, for example, is not as good as the girls' is. And if it was, would they be better as a result? And do you think ballet is a means by which all of these people could improve all of those things? There's about 47 different points in that question, Fiona. So,
thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now,
what do you think? I mean,
what I would say is that I think training is everything. Training is absolutely everything. So you can retrain your body, you can retrain muscles, you can retrain a thought process, do anything. It's just training. However, of course, there's the male and the physical bodies. There is a very famous ballet company called Ballet Trocadero, which is fully all male dancers. It's a bit of a fun piece, but they do jump and turn gracefully. Not exactly in the same context as women, but with regards to like Antonia was saying with movement, I think when I was in the Royal Chelsea Football Club, came in and worked with us for a Blue Peter special or something, and they came in and they were a little bit apprehensive, I think, about the whole day. This was a long time ago, and we start at the bar, not this kind of bar, but hand on the bar in a class in a studio, and I think halfway through bar they were quite exhausted because you're just using different muscles. It's control, it's so sustained, and yet when you come into so by the end of bar, which is strengthening and lengthening and flexibility and control and all sorts of stuff involved, then you move into the center, and then there's more of the same, and then we do pirouettes, which have to be really precise to work, and then we start jumping, and then we go into rehearsals for a whole day, and then we do a performance, and then it's the same thing the next day and the next day and the next day. So it's pretty consistent. They were quite exhausted after bar, but so in order, I think some of our lads went over to the football pitch a couple of days later to sort of run, and it's a blooming long pitch, the stamina you need to keep up to be doing that, and also you're engaging things like fast twitch muscles, which we do have, but it's on a much smaller playing field, if you like. But so they really came into their own, obviously, on their home turf. However, when you add sort of something like a ref saying, here, blow a whistle, run over to the side, pick that girl up over the top of your head and run to the other side of the court effortlessly, throw that into the mix, that was difficult for them. But if they'd had the training, they would have probably found that effortless. So it is all about training the muscles. It's all about, that it's the discipline, which is absolutely required. It's an essential part of training for any sport, and it's an essential part of dancing in particular. Well, anything. But another quick thing is, if you look at one of the most popular programs on television at the moment is Strictly Come Dancing, and if you watch how the athletes, the sportsmen, just raise their game, it's and they completely they take on a new mantle and they move into that as if it's there's no problem. It is about that discipline. It's about the determination, the commitment. It really is a mind thing, a mindset of, if I've been told I can, that's possible, then I'll do it, which is part of our training as athletes, sportsmen. Nothing is impossible, so
one would imagine, Donna, that what Fiona has just described there, the ballet essentially takes every bit of your body, it's every muscle that is there, and does something with it during the course of the training that you do. Whereas what I think I'm trying to say about sport, in particular certain very physical sports, is that they concentrate primarily on the bits that help that sport. Do you feel that ballet, in incorporating everything in the body, is beneficial to sports people because it does focus on everything? Or do you think, well, actually that's taken away from what they're going to be doing and have to be good at, and therefore might make them worse at it than they would be? What's your opinion on
that? I would say anything extra that you can improve on is a plus as a sportsman, as a sports person, and as a dancer. You are constantly, sportsmen and dancers are constantly wanting to better themselves. Okay, so both working together would just absolutely, it's a plus, isn't it? It's not going to be a hindrance. When going back to sort of training times back in the day when I trained, I don't know whether the ladies came across this as well. I was told, because I like gymnastics at the same time, I was told, oh no, by my ballet teacher, oh no, you can't do gymnastics. You're going to build up the muscles that we do not want, and anything like that. Nowadays, it's completely changed because all acro has come in, and everybody has to be so flexible, and so this and so that. So it's, as time progresses, obviously everybody has realised it doesn't matter. To help, to be the best, you do everything. You try everything.
Yeah.
For instance, myself at the moment, I'm horrendous. I have no upper body strength at all. It's completely gone from what I had. Obviously, I'm not dancing professionally anymore, and it is teaching, so all my strength is in my legs. So, for instance, the boxing would be absolutely amazing. I'd love to see some upper body strength, not with me, but with students as well. But the majority of dancers, the strength is in the legs. A bit like running, but ballet, particularly, you're using every muscle and every tendon and in different ways to any other sport, and it will just absolutely help any type of sport.
Okay, thanks for that, ladies. So I'm going to bring the gentleman in now. A gentleman who I've never seen Liam or David dance, but I have seen Gary dance, so I know he's never really done anything good there. So what I want to know is from your own particular sport, and so Gary, let's start with you. We're talking about cricket here now. What the ladies have said is that obviously you're using every muscle. It's designed to help support your core strength. It's designed to help to support your balance. Can you, in all honesty, see from what the ladies have said and from what we're trying to say that there is potentially a benefit to a cricketer in understanding more about that? I mean, I don't know, because I'm not a sporting type, as you well know. I don't know what cricketing training is. Is it just chucking a ball at a net, or what do they do?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. Well. Thanks for the summary of my dancing capability. I could respond with some view on your sporting capability.
We are old friends, by the way.
Excuse me. Yeah. What I should have said at the beginning, amongst the various things that I've got sort of hats on, I am actually a English Cricket Board qualified coach. So I'm a level 2 coach, and I'm still an active coach.
Okay.
And probably, rather than being flippant about sort of having played at Wembley a couple of times, I should have said, really, one of the really proud things that one of the things I'm really proud of is that, I'm still actively delivering coaching, in particular to under 9s and under 11s now, boys and girls. So and that's fantastic, really, really rewarding. Hard, but rewarding. Yeah, I think, more generally, I think the relationship between sport and dance is clear. I think there's very, very clear sort of connectivity and relevance. Cricket, I think, arguably even more so. It's a technical sport, and there are specific elements within, certainly, the way that it's coached, that lends itself to, I think, sort of expert input from dance, whether that be ballet or the sort of broader form. As for example, and you won't recognise this, Alan, because you've never probably held a bat. But for anyone who's tried to sort of,
only an old bat,
become a batsman. It's really about footwork. Really about footwork. It's about alignment, and it's about balance, and all the phraseology that I've already heard the ladies that talk about. But footwork is key. And what is surprising, I think, is that through coaching, I don't think we see much of the dance world reflected in that coaching program, or if it is, it's passed me by. And I've been a coach for a long time now, so I think to really get the benefit, as usual, you really want to get it early into the coaching and development program. Doing things with more experienced senior professional sports people, whether that be cricket or other sports, is interesting. But getting it sort of incorporated within the earlier stages is absolutely I think the right thing to do. Cricket is to some extent about precise movements, and again I hear a lot of that when the ladies were talking about ballet in particular. So I'm really interested in how that might come about, even at a local level. So at Highfield Cricket Club, 100 years old this year, it would be fantastic actually to get for our younger, under 9s, under 11s, under 13s, boys and girls, some expert dance sort of input.
You're booked.
And see how. I'm hoping you wouldn't be delivering that.
No, it'd be Donna.
I'd be maybe Donna. Donna, I think, would be much more. So yeah, I think cricket's bang on, and just as a bit of a throwaway, Strictly, of course, we had. It's quite a while ago now, but we had 2 successive years of cricketers. Darren Goff, not Darryl Goff. Darren Goff, he'd be very happy for you to have got his name wrong. And then Mark Ramprakash, I think, the following year. So 2 years.
That's really, really interesting, actually, because I'd never thought of, because I don't know anything about cricket, apart from I used to work for Royal Mail and we had a free bar at Old Trafford. So I went a few times and ended up crawling home on my hands and knees without ever having seen a ball played.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best days I've ever had.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting because obviously people who are non-sporting and are more artistically inclined don't see that side of what sport is. Which kind of brings me on to what Dave and I are looking at doing at the new dance school that we're opening in March, which is putting together boxing and dancing. Because it won't be just a maybe. It'll be, if you come to our dancing class, you have to do 1 day of boxing. If you go to the boxing class, you have to do at least 1 day of dancing as part of your training. And we might not even call it dancing and boxing. We might call it something completely different, because certainly here in Wigan, the sooner you mention arts and culture, you turn 75% of the population off as soon as you mention it. So, Dave, now, we've had this conversation already. You're a boxing bloke. Tell us what you think about what the ladies have said, what your opinion is, and anything else you want to chuck in.
Wonderful, thank you. No, it's been really interesting listening to everyone's take on kind of how traditional sport and more rhythmic sport like dancing, gymnastics kind of marry up together. Just for a little bit of context, my boxing career was just as an amateur. I was always a good technical boxer, but probably never really had the key ingredient to go to the next level, that sort of viciousness and that extra. But it never stopped me achieving in boxing. And a lot of the lads and girls that I train with, often they'll jibe at me a little bit because I was more of a puncher and a mover, or a runner as they would call me, but I was very good at it. And I will always come back and say boxing is just dancing with punches. There's no point standing in front of someone who's trying to punch you in the head and letting them punch you in the head. You're going to have a far more successful career if you can move and dance and avoid and get away, and all that comes from footwork. So it is interesting, this sort of combination that Alan's come to me with about dance and boxing, because I think it ties in really, really well. For a little bit more context now, my coaching sort of pathway is very much grassroots. We don't really have, we don't have any pathway to performance. We're not interested in the elite side of boxing. We're just about getting people engaged, getting people very novice level. Quite often we can do a session where there's not a single person who's boxed before, which for anyone who's coached, that's quite a challenge, because there's no role model, there's nobody to copy. I think that's actually the harder level of coach, as opposed to turning a really good performer into an elite performer. I think making someone who's never done it before into a fairly competent boxer is quite challenging. So we do that really well. And what I notice, and it might be anecdotal, but what I notice is, I don't know if this ties into what we want, or this is because there's a causation. It's because of the way we brought boys and girls up to think differently. But when the girls enter our class, because it's non-contact, because there's no pathway to performance, they've got that safety and that freedom to just learn the skills. The girls do really much better from an early stage, because a lot of it's just choreography. We show them the movements, how to form a jab, a backhand, a hook, the guard and the stance, moving forwards, moving backwards. And the girls are focused generally on accurately performing that movement. The boys just want to come in and just punch something as hard as they can, and they lose the technique. And we have to. It all starts with technique, and it all starts with footwork, and it all starts with balance and transfer of weight. And those that master that first will do better. We obviously have to pull the boys back in line and try and bring them back to basics and tell them that's what's more important to start with. But the girls do seem to get a grip with that. I don't know if that's because it's a natural thing or because they've been brought up to think they're not supposed to be powerful, strong, tough, and they're supposed to do things more accurately. So it'd be really interesting to see what the outcomes are when we start working with both boys and girls, dancing and boxing, and see kind of if that if we can change the way people approach it, or that is just the way it is. It'll be a really interesting sort of experiment, and I'm looking forward to that.
Well, and again, just to sort of to follow on from that, before I bring Liam in here, one of the things I really liked about what you just said, and I've never heard it described in that way before, is dance as being a rhythmic sport. I think that is a phrase I'm going to use now to try and flog what we do. I think that's just a perfect way of putting it for people who are put off by the concept of dance. Let's take our gents in the room here. If somebody said to you, come to a rhythmic sport class, as opposed to come to a ballet class, immediately that barrier has almost gone to me. So
I'm going to get the trademark on that.
Yeah, I'm going to say we need
I'll
to copyright that straight away. Really, really interesting, especially about the girls being more focused. And again, before I bring Liam in, just to throw to the ladies, clearly I used to work in another dance school, a local dance school, for 15 years. And we had kids from just out of their nappies to 16, 17, going on to further dance schools, etc. But there was one boy who started when he was 16, and he now dances at the Lido in Paris. He'd never danced before in his life, but he was so focused, and it's, I think, because the barriers to becoming a dancer were so great. He had to be so focused. He put so much into the training because it was him in Wigan as a boy. He needed to make it work, and sooner rather than later. So I don't know what I'm trying to say here. I think there's like a mental thing where if you are desperate to do it, but there's a barrier to it, you tend to overcome it. And maybe that's what the girls are doing there, because they're not supposed to be boxing. Interestingly enough, going back to Strictly Come Dancing, etc., one of the things that I have done is write to the girl who was the boxer on Strictly Come Dancing, Nicola Adams, who's also LGBTQ, to get her to come to Donna's and my opening day on the 2nd of March in order to portray all of those things that we're talking about. A girl who boxes, who can also dance, who also happens to be LGBTQ, and to try and get that across to the public. Whether she will come or not, I've no idea. I only spoke to her agent yesterday to see if she would do it. But if she would, I think that kind of epitomises what we're trying to do. Liam, okay, rugby, of course, Donna and I have done certain things with rugby. Yes, everybody said it's 1% improved the injury rate. Well, in that case, why the bloody hell are they still not doing it? So they dropped us after Matty Pete left. The guy who came in was as square, shall we say, as a cardboard box, and thought it was all for that kind of bloke, and they're not doing it anymore. Matty Pete's come back, and he's not introduced it back into rugby. Now, why is that? If we've all accepted that it's a good thing to do, it helps sport and this, that, and the other. They proved it improved their injury rate. Why would they then drop it? What do you think?
So the interesting point for me is, I think rugby stereotypically is probably seen as the most, almost the culturally ingrained working class, obviously in Wigan at the moment, ingrained as that cultural identity, what we're saying is what the barriers where we need to overcome. Now for me, I think there's a massive, as everyone's already touched on, there's a massive direct link between the two. The first one being the actual injury prevention, which we spoke on. I think that is absolutely critical. If you can, as the ladies have touched on already, if you can strengthen, a lot of injuries in rugby league, for example, are ankle injuries, knee injuries, which are generally, as you've already touched on, because we probably don't work enough on them areas and work generally on upper body. Stereotypically, a working week would consist of being on the field and lifting heavy weights in the gym. To counter that, I think there is an evolution. So I go back maybe 15 years ago, and there was no, for example, clubs now are doing mobility, they're doing plyometrics, they're doing Pilates, they're doing yoga, they're doing completely different things. So I wonder over time, and maybe you're on the cusp of a real idea, by the way, because again, looking at some of the best players we have in Super League and Rugby League are the ones that have got the best feet, good sidestep, are quick around players. Them are our best players. So I wonder if this is something where, and let's have it right, clubs, especially in any sport really, are always looking for an edge. There's very small margins within professional sport between an outstanding team, a team that wins a trophy, or a team that just misses out. So maybe this is something where the teams do look for an edge, and if you can make, like you've said already on the prevention of 1%, if you can make them 1% better, that's a big percentage over the course of a season, in my opinion.
That brings me back to the question then, if Wigan proves that, why has Wigan dropped dance from the curriculum? Why do you think that is?
I don't. You'd have to ask them directly the reason for that. But Matt, I can only see the benefits from what the ladies have discussed, from what you guys have discussed, of how important it would be going forward. And for me, and I'll give you another example, is that recently I was on my honeymoon in New York. So my context is my wife used to be a dancer, so we've got a keen interest in dancing, as you can imagine. I know it's a different type of dancing, but we went watching Chicago in Broadway, and went watching Moulin Rouge, and we were sat right near the front, and honestly was blown away by the talent, the footwork. Honestly, it was apt. And as me hold my hand up being a pretty sporting, can't dance, as Alan touched on at the start, I'm very wooden, can't dance, but honestly I was in awe of the talent of the dancers on show, and just watching the footwork and the balance. I think the balance is a big one that no one's discussed. We talk about footwork, but how good the balance is to maintain that. I think all of them, Alan, to link back to your question, all of them will link back to sport, whether that be cricket, boxing, rugby league. All of them skills link directly to sport.
Okay, let's take it even more personal then. You can't dance. You see every possible reason
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
You see every possible reason why dancing will be a benefit to you and the sport. We'll sign you up to do a dance class with us and a boxing class with Dave when we open our school.
Yeah.
Would you do it and then think carefully about this and think professionally, as a referee, if people found out that you were a ballet dancer or you were having dancing classes, as you enter the pitch, what's the likely reaction to be, do you think?
Well, we discussed this a little briefly in the intro, but for me, I'd like to think we've moved on a little bit over time, but clearly culturally I think we've a long way to go. Me personally, I would absolutely have no problem whatsoever saying I went to a dance class.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely, no problem whatsoever. But the question was, what would the perception from elsewhere be?
Yes,
I think that's a different question. But for me personally, I would absolutely no problem whatsoever saying I went to a dance or went to a boxing class. I'm not saying by the way, I'm not saying I'd be particularly good, but I'd have absolutely no problem saying I'd been.
Well, again, I think coming back to the ladies then here now, I think what I'm trying to get across is something that Dave mentioned over here is we're not necessarily in the school that we are opening, in the boxing place that we're opening, we're not necessarily aiming to train kids to be members of the Royal Ballet. It's highly unlikely, because places are so limited, the talent has to be so great. We all know if in the industry about Dada and all these grants that they get, which are very, very limited. Otherwise, it becomes a very, very expensive potential career for a family to fund if you're not that great a dancer when you start. And that I think is one of the biggest barriers in this town about kids thinking that the arts, dancing in particular, is not for them, because they think about the fact that the stalag that we used to teach in was 24,000 a year, possibly, without the grants. That's a lot for people from poorer backgrounds to actually face. Whereas I don't think kids see becoming a cricketer or becoming a rugby player or becoming a boxer. I don't think they have that same view that, oh, that's far too expensive, I can't do it. They don't see the cost as being an issue, and I'm not sure what the cost is. I'm sure there is a cost involved in it, but they don't seem to see that as being an issue. I'm not quite sure what point I'm trying to raise there, but moving on from that, it'll get edited in the cut. It'll sound marvellous when it's edited. What I want to talk about now is something else, which is the mental aspect of dance and sport and activity, and a couple of reasons for that, really. One is, when I was 10 years old, I wanted to be an opera singer or a concert pianist, and I went to my careers officer when I was 15 or 16 at the school we've both mentioned. Mind, it was 100 years ago, so it doesn't really matter. And they said to me, well, what about a job in British Aerospace? And I said, well, they don't have pianos in British Aerospace. Why would I want that? And for me, I'll be quite honest, I've meandered through several careers: law degrees, bank managers, building society manager, salesman, toffee salesman, finally getting to do what I wanted to do, which was to play the piano for a living, which is what I now do after 50 years. That has a mental effect on you, because every job that you do, it's not what you want to do. It's not what you want to pursue. If there is, and we were from a 2 up 2 down with an outside loo in Wigan. We had no money. And nobody even contemplated that was potentially a career that I could do. So I want to talk about the mental aspect of not being able what you want to do. I want to talk about the mental aspect. Donna and I, the whole reason we set up the Wigan Warriors thing was, I was in a training course at Ballet North in Leeds, and there were 300 students there. It was run by the RAD, and one of them was a boy. And I said, well, why do you think one of them was a boy? And the answer came out, because Northern Dad would rather die than his son telling me he wants to be a ballet dancer. And Donna and I both sat together and said, let's find the most macho men we can think of to do this, to try and dispel that myth that, you have to be effeminate and what have you. And so we went to Wigan Warriors. Strangely enough, they said yes straight away. So it's also overcoming the mental barriers of being considered to be in the arts, especially in the North, about not being able to do what you really want to do. And also, by taking part of something that has a benefit to you, what are the general benefits to people in taking part in sport and dance? There is a reason for this, I hasten to add. This is my sort of purely mercenary reason, which is we intend to go to the NHS and flog them the idea that social prescription of dance and boxing and sport is extremely beneficial to everybody, rather than giving them tranquilizers. That's one of the ploys we have got. So I hope everybody took all of that in, and I'm going to chuck it at Antonia, first of all, to explain mental aspects of dance, not being able to do what you want to do, overcoming barriers such as prejudice, and the general benefits of taking part in activity and group performance from a mental health point of view. Over to you, my Australian beauty.
Okay, well, I think first of all we've got to think not in terms of getting to the top of the pyramid necessarily. The top of the pyramid is for the people who are extremely talented and gifted, and most of us don't fall into that category, but that's okay. What you can do is get as far up the side of the pyramid as you are able and become a really well-rounded, fit, healthy person who has become proficient in your particular sport or art form. Surely that's enough. We can't make ourselves prisoners of our art or our skill or our sport by saying, if we don't make it to the very top, then we're no good. That's a fallacious argument, and it's guaranteed to make every student who realizes that they're not going to get to that point feel bad about themselves. What we're trying to do is make every person who participates in a sport or a dance activity or whatever feel good about themselves because they have learned how to utilize a whole lot of skills in a way that they couldn't do before. They've learned how to not only explore their personal best, so it is a very personal and internalized thing. You're striving all the time to see how much you can push yourself. But further to that is learning how to become part of a team, whether that's a football team or a netball team or a swimming team or a quarter ballet. You're then working collectively. It's the same with music, that you can play an instrument and be a fantastic solo instrumentalist, or you can play in an orchestra. There is nothing like the buzz of working or performing or playing with another group of people, and you realize not only are you all doing it really well, but you're doing your part. I think that's very important. I think the current climate for kids going into dance is that they all think somehow they're going to end up at the top of the tree. And that's not realistic. And in fact, that's not the point. That's not why they're doing it. It shouldn't be why they're doing it. They should be doing it for personal development.
Okay, excellent. Donna, any views you have on this and mental well-being? So, especially, I think what I'm getting at now is you obviously deal with people with learning difficulties predominantly. Now, obviously, if I play the piano and I happen to be, as occasionally happens, mostly when I'm on my own with the headphones on, I suddenly do sound like Arthur Rubinstein because I have played the Nocturne in E-flat perfectly without a hitch. It only ever happens that I've got the headphones on and I'm on my own, but it gives me this feeling of absolute elation. You feel as though you and the piano are as one. You are moving in this fabulous sort of thing, and it's almost like an out-of-body experience. For people with learning difficulties, for Jen in particular, who has dance syndrome, clearly she's the flagship person for dance syndrome. I don't know if you know, but Donna is very much part of an organisation who helps to train people with Down syndrome to become dance educators. And the Dance Syndrome is a big charity, nationwide charity. In fact, Jen, who Don not only teaches, but also she's her main carer. Donna is Jen's main carer. She recently won a, what was it, CBE or an OBE or something?
BEM.
She won a BEM, British Empire Medal.
Yeah,
and was awarded that because of the work she does. So from your perspective, in terms of mental well-being and health, especially amongst people with special educational needs, what do you think they feel when they get to do that? What is dance to them? I know what it is to Jen, but...
Yeah, it's... to be honest, it's not just about disabilities as well. Dance is a freedom. Anybody can dance. Okay, it doesn't matter how. You don't, as Antonia said earlier, you don't need to be the top of the tree. You don't have to look like that. Anybody can dance. If you look out there, put some music on. People move in their own ways. Okay, it's fun. It's a freedom. That's how I see it. When I dance, I forget. I leave all my baggage at the door, and I forget about the world. It's fun. You just get lost. It's a language, okay, and that's what happens with disabilities, learning difficulties, disabilities as well. It's a communication, and these people love that. Anybody, as we say, anybody can dance, and just to see people smile and be lost in the fun and the movement, and it doesn't matter how people are moving. Okay, that's what we also need to think about as well. Anybody can dance in any way.
Fantastic. Fiona, perhaps you has, someone who's been at the top of the tree, is someone who's been very, very near there. Clearly, being a dancer is it makes you feel great and everything else, but clearly there's a huge amount of pressure on a dancer, a professional dancer, to be able to dance continuously. And as you say, the training program is so intense. and again, going back to where we all met, some of those kids have real emotional problems going into dance in the first place. So how do you see dance as being a sort of, I don't know, almost like Donna says it's a freedom, it's for people to do. What's your view on whatever I've just talked about, which I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, well, I think
Sorry.
I think, to be honest, I think dance is an international it's a universal language. It people portray all sorts of things in all different cultures, and like Donna was saying, it's that freedom of movement, it's expression. It was proved in COVID that one of the things that, despite what the government wanted us to do, which was for all particular dancers, and it was portrayed in an advert with someone putting on a point shoe, a very bad picture of a dancer putting on a point shoe, that we should retrain, and that was shocking, because in fact it was proven that during COVID it was things like arts and sport that really helped everyone's mental health and well-being. With regards to, if I could just refer to a couple of things, one of the reasons that I think both in sport and ballet or dance, one of the reasons that we are cautious about spending too much time doing other things, like for a rugby player doing ballet, or for a ballet dancer doing anything different, is because we've got a very short-lived career. So we want to time efficiency. So things like rehabilitation is essential. Things like maintaining your body is essential, in order to be able to perform at your peak, at your best. But introducing other things into that in a very short career span, that's sort of part of that argument. I would say that people go, do I have time for that? Is that essential to that? It is, but we can't fit it in our short time. Throw an injury into that equation and you're off and then suddenly it's like it is this enormous pressure constantly. Parents, I mean, we worked at a performing arts school, not a million miles from where you're sitting. It was an experience for me, and I remember sitting there thinking, in fact, I had a conversation recently with some of my cohort who are teaching in some of the top schools in this country, and globally actually, and we had a conversation where, every year there's this, all these kids want to be dancers or in the performing arts industry, and they're taken into these schools. There is not enough contracts. Realistically, there's not enough contracts to cover any of that. So as teachers and parents, we have to equip those students with the skills to dealing with rejection or disappointment. I never use the word fail, because that shouldn't come into the vocabulary. By just even attempting what you're doing, by sticking with it, you're not failing ever, but it is difficult. And that's the hardest thing. It's like I've had to sit in front of parents who say, so what guarantee, like dads who will sit back in the chair and say, what guarantee can you give to me that investing in our child like this and getting their hopes up, what guarantee can you give that they're going to have a job? And I can't. That's the bottom line. But what we do is that what we do is that is, and it's the same in sport. I know this because my kids went to a very well-known sports school, and it's the fact that if you go on to like a university or to a job, and on a job application, say there's 50 people have applied for that job, and some of them have come out of Oxford and Cambridge or whatever, and they've got great. What people do actually, and I know this for a fact, what people do look for is the fact that if you've been a sportsman, if you've been a dancer, they know that you've got the commitment, the dedication, the discipline. That gives you brownie points. Because the right people in the right jobs will look at that and go, this person is going to give us the dedication, the commitment. They're not going to be flaky and go and look for something else. They'll give you loyalty. It's something that's inbred in us as sports people and dancers, right from the off. Parents say to me, so, I've got to have a plan B. My son wants to be a rugby player and play for England. My son wants to be a football player and play for national team. My daughter wants to be in, Chicago and West End or the Royal Ballet. And what we've got to do, what I often hear from parents is that, we've got to have a plan B. But in our career, you just have to aim for plan A. Plan B will always happen. Plan B will always happen. There'll always be a plan B. You'll always be able to get a job, but in something else. But plan A with the sportsman and with the dancer, that's what we aim for. That's bred, that's in our bloodstream, and that's very different. And going back to this sort of mental health, and in dance schools, in dance companies and dance schools, and many of my colleagues, they do Parkinson for dance, which is proven to be an incredible rehabilitation and moment when these you put the music on, you start to move, and they can move in a controlled way. A very good friend of mine, Darcy Bussell, is when she left the Royal, she started up a new form of she started up DD Mix, which is diverse dance. And she went to the government and got them to persuade them to sort of include dance into a PE curriculum on a serious level, because so many kids don't do sports because they're just insecure about it. And there's so many great sportsmen in their class, or there may be, the wrong shape or wrong eye, or learning learning issues. So these things are already in place, because it's been proven that, in fact, it's really good for mental health, for for well-being, all that sort of thing. Everything falls into place if you're feeling better about yourself, and your self-esteem is better. So Darcy introduced DD Mix just because kids are more happy to go into a PE studio maybe and start doing that, and from that other things develop. And in my kids' school, I'm dyslexic. I'm really dyslexic. And I know Darcy won't mind me telling you, because she's a big advocate for this, ambassador, but she's also quite dyslexic. She's quite far on the spectrum. And that in a studio is presented a lot with choreography. If someone sits down and says to us in a studio, right, start with your left foot at the back and we're doing the blah, 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 nothing. But if you put Darcy and I in the front and someone demonstrates it, we've got it in a nanosecond, because we're visual learners, and it's just there. So I think things like choreography, like he was saying about the boxing, the use of the feet. My husband's Filipino, so Manny Pacquiao is like a huge hero to the Filipinos. But if you watch his footwork, it's extraordinary. It's fleeting. It's fast. It's like, even as a dancer, and I was known for my fast footwork, and British Ballet is known for their fast, clean, crisp. But I look at Manny Pacquiao and I go, wow, if you put him on a dance stage, it would be quite hard to keep up with how fast he moves, his ability to transfer his weight. And it's like you say, it's that synergy we can lend so much to. Yeah.
I think you're right there. Donna, am I conscious that you need to leave?
Yeah, I've got to
right.
teach everyone. I do apologise.
Right, okay,
Sorry.
all right. See you later, honey.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Donna.
Nice to meet you, Donna.
Okay, so some really, really interesting points there. One of the things that struck me as well is that obviously Fiona's saying, once you're in it, you have to be focused on plan A rather than an alternative. Otherwise, you're not going to make it to the top thing. But that also goes back to something Gary said earlier, which is you need to start with this, if you like, new form earlier on. So rather than just having the dance school where you go to the bar or the rugby school where you just play football, it's that very, very early stage where perhaps, which is obviously what we are trying to do, and it might not just be boxing that we do, we'd like to involve cricket, we'd like to involve rugby. We are going to involve a very famous Rugby League referee who's going to be our pin-up boy for our new dance activity. Mental health wise, again, achievement of something. I mean, I remember when my wife died, I went on a cruise ship and I'd thought I was going to sit with 8 different people and it'd be great to be there. When I got on the ship, it was full of families. I was on my own, hadn't a clue. I thought, what the hell have I done here? And the first thing I did was thought, right, the last time Winifred and I went on a cruise 10 years ago, we went to Tommy Moss, who was a local ballroom dance teacher, to learn how to do a dance. Because I thought, well, I want to go and dance on, when they have these ballroom evenings on the cruise ship, because that's what people do. So the first thing I did was join the dance school on the ship. And I'd always wanted to do the tango. Just the tango. Nothing else. Couldn't be bothered about anything else. Just the tango. And I learned how to do the tango. And I was so pleased with myself. And Gary will tell you, he was in the audience 12 months ago when I did the Wigan Hospice Strictly Come Dancing dance thing and danced the tango.
You were robbed.
I was robbed. I should have won. But the reason I wanted to do it was I'd seen Zoe Ball and I can't remember who her partner was on Strictly Come Dancing, the tall guy who's no longer in it. Ian Waite and Zoe Ball. And at the end of the dance, he'd thrown her on the floor. And I said, I don't care what the steps are, but I'm going to throw her on the floor at the end. And we did it, and it felt so fantastic. Now, if you see the video of me doing the tango, it looks like Moby Dick has decided to come out of the waves and attempt to do a dance. But I felt fantastic about it. And again, I don't know why I took that bloody story. I've completely forgotten what track I was on in the first place. I think I'm talking about mental health, the feeling of doing something really great. Yeah. And I've never been a sportsman until we started working the Warriors, and I am now the biggest Warriors fan. I spend a fortune at that club, and the excitement I get when we win, which I'd never experienced until I was 50 and over, 60 and over, because I've never been sporting. To me, it was always something, that's what those thick people do, because I'm far more intellectual than that. Sorry, guys, but... And suddenly, I understand. I understand what being in a crowd, in a stadium. I've even started to go to watch the Latics, would you believe, which shows how my character has changed immensely. And it's that buzz of feeling and the conversation you can then have with people that you've never been able to have before because you didn't know that Man United had just taken on a new player or something. So again, I'm not sure why I brought that up either. But... Let's just sort of open the conversation up now, because I'm sick of directing things and I've forgotten what bloody question I'm supposed to be asking you anyway. So, Mr. Speakman, then, let's talk to you again about your cricketing guy. So we're talking about, you mentioned it yourself, you think there's a synergy there between what we do and what they do. What do you think would be the reaction if you went to Highfield Cricket Club and said, right, I'm thinking of doing this? What do you think the reaction would be?
Well, I think at the level that that I'm talking about. So I'm not focused here on sort of professional elite sport or dance. So that this is early stage young boys and girls looking to enjoy something. We are providing a sort of an opportunity for them to play cricket, but all the things that have been mentioned with regards to sort of physical health, mental health opportunities are relevant. So what we do in the main is outside. What we do in the main is team based. What we do in the main makes fun mandatory. So anything that can reinforce that, And I think the one thing that sort of strikes me, having listened to everyone speak, is certainly in those early stages, getting things that are fresh, more engaging, more fun, perhaps, if you like, taking things from different sports and dance, lends itself to that. It refreshes things. So if I was to present some new drills based on boxing or broad dance or ballet or another sport, rugby, to an under 9s group or an under 11s group, they're going to buy into that, or they're not. I mean, the content of what it is really what will matter. They will react positively to it or negatively to it based on whether they enjoy it or not. But I think there's a better chance that they will enjoy it by the very variety that we'll be able to deliver. And I think I would probably turn that on its head and say perhaps a challenge to dance schools, certainly for earlier stage. To what extent might you consider, a cricket-based drill that's something we use for footwork, or similarly, for boxing. To what extent is dance a bit stuck in its ways in the way that I think maybe cricket's been a bit stuck in its ways?
Well, again, let's go back to our dancers here then for a start. I mean, as I say, I remember working for a local dance school for 15 years. Now, all those kids did, if they're doing ISTD primary grade 1, is for the first 2 years, they turn up and they stand at the bar, do whatever, and do exactly the same thing at exactly the same time every single week for 4 years. And then they move on to another series of exactly the same thing at exactly the same time, which they do for another 2 years until they perfect that technique. Now, that seems to me to be, as a piano teacher that I am, that's the old thing where you never play a tune until you've learned 3 years of scales. Kids today would drop that because they're so used to instant success on computers and everything else. Is it time that rigidity of the... And again, I might be talking out of turn here because I don't know what the RAD do now, but they seem to have this set thing where, I mean, I even recall, I think that there is actually a difference between the way the RAD describes an on-the-don and the way the ISTD describes an on-the-don. I seem to remember in a class with you, Antonia, that there was somebody said, oh no, we do this in da-da-da-da-da, or whatever. And it was like, well, I don't care what they do. This is what it is, And there's this rigidity amongst dance. We think maybe it's about sport and sport's not open enough, but maybe dance too, unless I'm completely out of it and don't understand. Ladies, tell me, am I right? Am I wrong? What's going on here?
I think you're quite right in terms of the climate of kids today. They do want instant success because that's how their lives operate. Everything happens at the touch of a button. However, it wouldn't matter whether you were looking at training someone for swimming or dancing or tennis or whatever. It's all down to muscle memory. And the only way you develop that is practice. So,
Right.
the kids can rant and rail as much as they like. An intelligent teacher will put training exercises with the same content in as many different formats as you can possibly imagine, but it comes down to the same thing. You do it for 1,000 hours, you're good at it. That's it.
Right. Okay. That seems reasonable enough. Fee,
Yeah,
what do you think about that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, I think I started off, one of the first things I said is that anything is possible, but training. So you do have to have, obviously you have to have an interest, you have to have a passion for it, you have to want it, and you have to have some sort of potential and talent. But training is everything. And when I'm teaching, I say to my kids, the only F word you need is focus, because it is everything. It's everything. Anything you do, whether it's, my dad was a good golfer, but and I've seen my kids' cohorts go through. They're good, it's a well-known school for swimming and rugby in particular, but also things like shooting. They introduced shooting because there was quite a lot of dyslexics at the school, so they excel with hand-to-eye coordination. With other team sports, they didn't. So their self-esteem, their interest was, because they weren't succeeding, they kind of fell out of things. So the headmaster introduced shooting as a way of engaging them in something that they might excel in. And it was amazing. The results have been incredible. And my son, who's really like, hey, woohoo, a bit like me, really. But, particularly when I was younger, it's nothing like. I was really blown away watching him the first day in the range, because he was so calm. And just before you take that shot, they teach you have to exhale, and it's very similar with ballet. It's like when I'm training them, I use that comparison, because I'll say, kids, particularly when they're doing pirouettes, they want to be doing 8, because on YouTube they've seen people doing 8 pirouettes, and so it looks so easy, but they're only doing 8 because they've trained so hard. So you have to get them to realize that just before you take off for the pirouette, instead of going like this and being all tense, you've got to exhale and trust the process, which is a phrase that I learned from one of my son's friends who was at a rugby academy, and his coach said to him, TTP, trust the process. And all my students, ballet students, use that. TTP, Miss Brockway, TTP, because, and that came from a rugby, and it was brilliant. I sat with him and I took notes. I went, what else do you do? And it was amazing learning from their coach. I think it was the Leicester, is it Leicester Tigers? No. Yeah. And they were using this, and things like, he had to sort of cook every once a week. He had to film himself cooking something, and it was just a very clever way of engaging them in like all the right way to think about food and health and the whole career as a whole. In ballet we have real issues with eating disorders, and a lot of the time it's to do with just actually the amount of work you do. When I was in the Royal Ballet, if I start at 8-9 in the morning and I finish at 11 at night, I go home and I don't feel like eating because it's too late, but I know I've got a full day of work. So when do you eat? And before performance, you don't want to eat because you don't want to be dancing on a full stomach. So it's actually not with, I love food. I've never not loved food. It's not about that. It's about just the sheer volume of work you're doing. But with others, there is another element where someone has said something that's planted a seed in their head, some teacher or something that might have said the wrong phrase, and that spins them off on another. Whereas the rugby coaches were just really, it was really interesting listening to his training and how how straightforward it was, and these classic phrases like trust the process, trust your coach. And that is everything. Dance, football, golf, tennis, cricket, these are all intelligent sports. You cannot do them unless you are using your head. None of them can be done unless you're actually intelligently approaching the work. And that takes focus, and it takes understanding of that use of your brain, which is another muscle.
Okay. Just going back to the guys then here. Obviously, the ladies have just been talking about what they've been talking about then. But in terms of accepting that, perhaps introducing all these elements in almost in disguise, because I'm a firm believer that as soon as you mention the word arts and culture, or you define things as being within certain boxes, that you immediately put half the people off. So if you didn't call it, we're going to be doing boxing and ballet, we're going to be doing cricket and tap dancing, or we're going to be doing rugby and Zumba, and you just said this is the new, as Gary said, this is just a new technique that we're learning this week for cricket. The fact that it has those elements in it, does that help overcome whatever barriers there may not be? Because personally, I think the Billy Elliot syndrome has never happened as far as I'm concerned. You don't get hordes of I don't think, again, you tell me here, ladies, you're in the profession, but I don't think you get loads of working class kids becoming the top of the tree in ballet dancing or any other. It's still very much the field of the kids who went to see it with their families from a middle class background. Am I wrong or right there?
No, I think you're spot on there, unfortunately.
I think it's a mix.
Okay, so we've got slightly different views, which is good. Gentlemen, what's your view on what I've just said about actually not defining it as, oh, this is part of your dance training, this is part of the thing you have to do. If I say to Dave's boxing kids, you've got to do a lesson of ballet, or if we don't tell them and just say, right, this is today's training routine.
Alan, I think, just picking up on what you said there, I think there's loads of things at play from what we've just discussed here. I think first and foremost, people actually want to know what they're doing because that's the hook. So we get people in off the streets because we're doing boxing.
Right.
However, once they're with me, they have the trust in me, and you come and watch my boxing session, it doesn't look like a boxing session quite a lot of the time. We do so many different variations and different formats of delivering skills and trying to get ideas across. Sometimes we just switch off on boxing completely because it's quite boring day in, day out. So we use... And we actually deliver a family fitness session in the summertime just so we can keep in touch with our families. And the whole concept is camouflage fitness. It's completely hidden. The idea of the exertion and the effort put in is hidden behind laughter and joy and fun. And it has really good outcomes. But I think there's a place for every single element of... It's almost like a ladder. I think in its purest form, sport and activity and dance and gymnastics is just escapism. I think we go and do it because we want something to do. We're interested in a particular thing. That's the hook that gets us in there. But once we're doing it, it's just being there with a group of like-minded people, working our bodies, releasing those endorphins, feeling good, going away feeling like you've improved. And particularly boxing, I wasn't actually a really competent sports person when I was younger. Maybe confidence, maybe skill, maybe a mixture of both. I don't know. But when I played football, I always felt the eyes of the other 10 players on me. It was boxing, I went there, and I was pretty useless, to be honest, for the first 2 years. And I got really, really good because it gave me the freedom and the space to improve at my speed and my tempo. And I think, depending what you want to achieve in your sport or your given area, you've got to go and seek out the people with the right ethos. Now, we work with a lot of people. I almost describe us as the boxing club for people who don't want to go to boxing clubs or can't go to a boxing club, or... Because most people who go through a boxing club door, first thing the coach is going to say, particularly your old school coach, it's probably changed a little bit now, but are you going to be a fighter? And they're weighing up, have you got what it takes to be a fighter? Well, really, who wants to be a fighter? There's probably 5% of the people come through a boxing club door are going to have either the skill or the will, and you need both to be a fighter. So that's over 95% of people who could really benefit from the training and all the ethos that boxing has and the character development, just get kind of shunned away, and they just sub-pay us in the end. So we turned it on its head. We operate the way we do in spite of a genuine boxing club because we want to be open and give everyone that opportunity to train, but not worry about getting punched in the nose. So I think it really works. I think all sports can lend themselves to other sports, depending what the ethos is of your kind of training programs. If you are, like Fiona said, if you are an elite level performer, you're not going to have much time in there for other sports. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. You just got to pick the time in your training period to do it. So when you're going right up to like top level competition, Challenge Cup finals or the Ashes, you're not going to be doing ballet. Sorry, but you're focusing on skills, drills, techniques. And that's specification. That's training for the outcome you want, in that very short period of time. But it's boring doing that all the time. If when it's kind of down season, pre-season, you're not really working towards a big outcome, bring a ballet school in, bring a boxing club in, come and do, because that's tedium, and that's where you kind of mix up your training methods and that keeps people enjoying it. Because I think essentially everyone goes in sport, whether they're going to be the top of the tree or the bottom of the tree, to escape. And I think if you can keep it fresh and keep it fun and introduce different things, everyone's going to enjoy that. It's just to what degree does each person need that because of what they're trying to achieve. If you're just doing sport for the sake of playing and being healthy and being fit, then throw as many different things in there. If you've got a particular focus and you've got the skill and the will to be at the top, then you're probably going to have to manage your time and your training methods more closely. It doesn't mean it's a closed door to other things. It just means you've got to be a little bit more mindful of how and when. But for our level, mix as many different things in there. Because kids, 90% of the people that go to a rugby club, they're not going to be a rugby player eventually. They're going to go to work.
It's just
They're gonna
keeping that
stop playing.
content fresh, isn't it?
Keep them moving,
yeah.
keep having fun, keep them laughing, keep them socialising, keep them around good role models, and we'll be nailing it.
Fantastic.
And I think that is the key thing that we should all be working for until you become, like you two ladies are, elite kind of performers, and then you have got to be more focused, and that is very, very important if you want to. I don't want to kill aspiration. That's really important. Everyone should have that goal, but they're few and far between. You're exceptional people if you get there. The rest of us, I don't know if I'm speaking for everyone in this room, but us guys are
cheeky bastard. I'm exceptional in what I do.
Us guys, in terms of sport, we just enjoy being part of it and being in there and being in the mix, and that's what sport is for you, for the majority of people.
Okay, that's
that's what I was. That's what I was saying a bit earlier about if you get to that point, and because it's a short term, it really is a short career. So you have to make choices about what works. But I totally agree. It's so important to keep variety in there, to keep people interested. And companies and schools, top schools, are much better now about doing that, throwing someone in, bringing in an industry professional to work with someone in a different context, or a choreographer to just throw in the mix, or a sports person. It's to keep us, to keep it varied.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
Again, we've got that short career when you're at top of the game, and it's funny. Like when I was the first soloist, everyone was like, "Oh, it must be great," because you're at the top of your game. But I could feel the breath of a 20-year-old who was just coming up from the school, breathing down my neck. So it never stops. The pressure never stops. Even at, I went on for quite a long time, but even at 30, 40, you don't ever sit on your laurels and think, oh, I've made it. You're only as good as your last performance, as your last match, as your last... and you can have off days and off games, and you've got to pick yourself up and get on with it. You can't let that affect you, because there are kids who are much younger than me going at the back of my neck. So,
I'm gonna pick up on that very point very, very shortly. But first, I want to again just thank Dave here for giving me yet another phrase, which is camouflage fitness. So we've had rhythmic sport and camouflage fitness now. That's definitely going to be my thing. Okay, just to go back to your point, strangely enough, I woke up at 4:20 this morning, and thinking about what I was coming to do, I started to watch the Nureyev-Fontaine film of Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet. Now, again, Fontaine, what you're talking about, she must have been 50 plus or 40 plus in that production. So... yeah, so it's like, God, she had these people constantly, presumably, breathing down her neck all the time. And I know
actually, with Fontaine, it's a different era, and she was an icon.
Yes,
and she even right up to the end of her, we held her in enormously high esteem. She was a legend. However, now, as like any of the sportsmen would attain to, there was much more. Back in her day,
yes.
You've got to get a real job. There's only the exception. So most parents were going, no, you can't be this because you've got to get a real job. So there was less people being supported to go into arts and sports, because there wasn't a future in it unless you were like elite or the top of your game.
I've got to just tell you a story now based on that, because it just popped in my mind, and you guys have probably heard this before, but when we took the rugby lads to Covent Garden to the senior dance school over the bridge next to the Royal Opera House, Chris Pony met us, Sir Chris Pony, and we'd taken him a signed rugby shirt. This is a true story of the Wigan Warriors rugby shirt, and he said, where am I going to put that? And he looked round in the sort of staircase at the thing. He said, I'll move that. And it was a portrait of Margot Fontaine. So he was going to take the portrait of Margot Fontaine down to put a signed Wigan Warriors shirt up. One of the highlights of my career, that, but there you go. Okay, I'm conscious of time, but there's one last topic that I want to bring up amongst all of us, and it is something to do with fees mentioned, Dave mentioned. We're talking about athletes who get to the top of the sport. We're talking about dancers who get to the top of the sport. But there are many, many, many of them who are focused on plan A, and then suddenly plan A is ripped away from them for whatever reason. And one of the reasons that Matty Peet, the current manager of Wigan Warriors, was so keen to have ballet as part of the programme was because he wanted his guys to open their minds to other things just in case. And we know that a lot of footballers are in academies, a lot of rugby players are in academies, presumably a lot of cricketers. Do they have cricketing academy? Forgive me for my ignorance here. They've all got that focus then, but then suddenly, for one reason or another, mostly you're not good enough. And that phrase in itself, to someone who's been doing nothing else, must be an absolute smack in the teeth. That how you get over it, I don't know. And his reasoning was they have to have their minds open to absolutely everything. They mustn't close their minds off to it because most of them will never get there. So, Liam, you mentioned yourself, you're a rugby player. You said you were quite average. You then, yeah, you then went off into obviously refereeing. And obviously you're at the top of your tree. You have done very many senior finals for the Super League and everything else. So what's your... And again, you must come in touch with these players all the time who have got to a certain point. And I remember distinctly there's a young fella from one of the Yorkshire clubs who now runs a mental health thing because he was assiduously thrown out of the club because of an injury and almost dropped overnight and decided he was going to kill himself. And he didn't, but it took him something. I can't remember his name. What's the guy's name? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but vaguely.
Anyway,
Another charity.
So, similarly, it must apply to dancers too. If you get through the Royal Ballet School, obviously, Fiona, you managed to get taken on by the company, but that must be few and far between of all the kids who actually go through the doors at the Royal Ballet, that White House, whatever it's called. So, I'm just interested for your own feelings as to how what we're trying to do is also mentally beneficial in that it opens up avenues that kids may never have thought of just in case they can't do plan A. Does that make sense?
Well, it's interesting, Alan, on that point, and you're talking about plan A, plan B, what I'm doing now is probably plan Z.
Okay.
In the sense of, I'd absolutely, being a professional referee wasn't even on my radar, even at probably 17, even maybe 18, just was not on the radar at all. At uni, I did a law degree. My plan was completely to be a solicitor because I think I'd accepted. I'd played rugby throughout school at the Deanery, but I think possibly because I'd accepted at a young age that I wasn't good enough for the elite, what we're talking about, so professional rugby league, the Royal Ballet. I knew I accepted I wasn't good enough, didn't have the skill set for that level. But actually, I think looking back now, what that did, I enjoyed it more. I enjoyed because I wasn't chasing the dream of being the elite at that point. I really enjoyed it. And linking back to what your point is that I actually think that enjoyment factor comes from, in all sports this, and I think we've all touched on it to a degree, I think especially young kids now, and certainly since I was young, are sold this dream of getting to the top. And in my opinion, in a lot of cases, probably 90% of cases, maybe more, it's a false dream. Because it's such a minute number that can make it to the top, whether that be football. I know they're signing, some football clubs now are signing kids at 7 and 8 years old, and they're built to be designed to get to the top and play for a Man United or a Wigan Warriors or a Leeds Rhinos, whoever it may be. But there's only a small minute that get there. So flip that back to me. My journey was a plan Z. It had absolutely no route of getting there, but that my enjoyment for it, I think, came out of that. And certainly now, I think I appreciate that journey more, and I appreciate working with the players, how hard they've got to. Because I'm in the middle of some of these games, and you've got the best view in the house. Some of the hits they take, some of the speed they're working at.
Some of the fans might not agree with that.
That's true as well. But some of the collisions that you see front on, and I'm almost thinking to myself, thank God I'm not the one who's got that ball and I've got a whistle in hand. So, yeah, coming back to the point of that, I think there's a lot of it. And I think moving the dial, focusing more on enjoyment and camouflage, fitness was a good for it. Of using that enjoyment factor, whether that be in ballet, dance, whatever sport, that enjoyment factor, making that the focus as opposed to this dream of the elite, I think moves the dial, in my opinion.
Okay, ladies, just from your point of view, let's suppose Plan A hadn't worked. What would you have done then, do you think? And secondly, what sport might you have gone into had Plan A as a dancer not worked?
Well, I always wanted to be an astronaut, but I think my so it was a ballet dancer or an astronaut. But I was a really fast runner. I love all sports, but I think that was my first love, was sport. And then my mum taught me to see a ballet, and I thought it was incredibly athletic and controlled, and I was blown away by how high they jumped and where it came from, and that I was 7 or something, and I remember thinking, wow. And I love music, but I think running I would have probably done. But yeah, it is. I think like you're saying in the studio, it's Plan A is really, it's a dream, and there's nothing wrong with having that dream. It's like where I live now is it's in a little village in Wales. My closest town, not far away at all, is Wrexham, and that whole story, not just for the team, the football team, which is like a Hollywood story, fairy tale, but the entire community, and it seeps out. It's the whole county, the effect that this euphoria has had, not just on the team players, who then believe, and like we're talking about the word synergy that's been used, synergy and in that team has been extraordinary. It's not just about the Hollywood influence. Obviously the money helps, but that input, but it's the belief and the fans and the community. I cannot tell you how different it is to how it was before Hollywood took over, but it's hope. It's a dream. They have no expectations that they're going to be the top of the Premier League or anything, but there's hope, there's optimism, there's support, and that happens, like you say, if you start off with a dream, and it's not a bad thing. Even we, as teachers and parents, we've just got to be there to support people. If it doesn't work, we have to be there to teach, to equip students and children with the skills to deal with disappointment and rejection, and know that there is options, a very wide spectrum of options. That's our job, and if we're doing our job properly as teachers, coaches, mentors, parents, then that's okay. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work out that way, but
no.
Yeah, but Wrexham is a great example of it's not just the team and how just winning has. It's the optimist. It is that whole, the well-being, the mental health, the euphoria of sports, and how it's not just changed the fans. It's an entire community. It literally has seeped out into the whole county.
Yeah,
the benefits.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, Antonia, I realise I've asked you this question, but you've had more careers than Gary here. I know that, successful ones too. So, you moved into writing, you moved into journalism, or did that come first? I'm not really sure. Were you a dancer first, and then I think you had an injury, didn't you? And that's a put paid to most of your actual professional career. But then clearly you went on to do. Rather than me sort of surmise, you tell us what happened to you.
Well, it was kind of different for me because
we've lost your sound, darling. Lost your sound. Can't hear you.
Can't hear me?
Oh, hang on. I'll have to go and get the technical guy. We've suddenly lost your sound. Is he in there?
Oh.
Are you in there, Dan? We've lost Antonia's sound. They're trying to get you back, honey. Whilst we're waiting, I'll speak to... Yeah. I'm conscious of time here. Gary, in terms of cricketers, then what's the academy's setup for cricketers? I've never even heard of it.
Oh, it's very similar to all professional clubs. So you've got. I mean, it's a county structure principally. So so each country has either states or counties, and there's a full pyramid, age groups, etc. So yeah, it's very similar to professional football, rugby, just that for rugby and football in particular, you've got towns or cities in a professional structure. So yeah, you've got all of the similar challenges, opportunities, disappointments, frustrations.
And do they provide sort of a holistic approach to kids in academies that, look, you might not get here, we're going to try and give you other alternatives? Because one doesn't hear about cricketers threatening suicide, which I suppose is, think about the money difference between a professional cricketer and a professional first division, what's it called, super division, whatever it's called.
There are examples of suicide, whether they were directly related to the disappointment in the game or elsewhere. There's a very famous Ben Hollyoak, whose brother, well, he played for England, as did his brother. I think his brother Adam was captain, actually. Again, I can't recall exactly what the circumstances of that were. So, I mean, as holistic as funding allows, I guess. So it's money, the Premier League and football has a lot more resource, a lot more money. How it spends it, you could challenge that, but much more money than would be in rugby league, even rugby union, certainly cricket, and there'll be other sports that probably aren't even as well funded as that. Well,
I think, bearing in mind that we've got this technical issue, shall we pull it to a close then? It's been the first attempt. Clearly, we know. Thank you so much to Antonia, because it must be about 4:00 in the morning in Melbourne by now. Not quite. Thank you so much again to Fiona. I know you're extremely busy lady. Thank you so much for coming to this. We will, of course, send you the full video of what it is, then you can see yourselves. It will be edited, and we'll be releasing the podcasts over various stages. It will be edited in such a way that it won't change what you're saying, if you know what I mean. We won't alter what you're saying. So I'll send you everything before we publish it. But clearly it is going to be on Spotify and various stuff. If you could let all your multitudinous friends know when you know that it is going out there and that you're on it, then that would be really, really useful. I think it's been tremendous from all the guys' points of view. I think we've got quite a number of those questions answered, although I lost complete track of where the hell we were supposed to be going half the time. But thank you so much, and give yourselves a round of applause, please. And I'll see you soon, ladies. Antonia.